I have told this story exactly 3 times in my life. Once to my sister the night it happened, once to my daughter on the evening she turned 18, and once quietly to the road captain of the Iron Compass MC at a little reunion they held out on Route 9 about 12 years ago, just so he'd know what became of us. He nodded, touched the brim of his cap, and didn't say a word. Men like that never need to. The year was 1993. My daughter, Callie, was 7 years old, and the two of us were living in a 2-room apartment above a dry goods shop in Culver's Bend, Tennessee, a town so small the post office and the bait shop shared a building. I had been waitressing at Harlan's Diner for going on 4 years. It wasn't glamorous work, and Harlan Pruitt, the man who owned it, was not a glamorous employer. But the hours fit school pickup, the regulars tipped decent, and the cook, an old man named Willie, made sure I ate a hot meal every shift. In 1993, those things mattered more than I can explain to someone who has never had to count them. Harlan Pruitt was the kind of man who confused power with the right to humiliate people. He was not physically threatening. He was short and soft and wore short-sleeved dress shirts he ordered from a catalog, but he had a talent for finding the precise moment when a woman had the least leverage and choosing that moment to apply pressure. He knew I was behind 2 months on rent because the alternator in my car had gone out in August and eaten my savings. He knew Callie had missed 3 days of school with an ear infection I'd been treating with drugstore drops because a pediatrician visit was $40 I didn't have. He knew all of this the way a certain kind of man learns the vulnerabilities of the people who depend on him, cataloging them quietly, saving them for later. Later came on a Tuesday in October. He called me into his office at the end of the lunch rush and told me, very calmly, that $43 had gone missing from the register over the past 2 weeks. He said the discrepancy had been traced to my shifts. He said he was letting me go, effective immediately, and that if I wanted to avoid involving the county sheriff, he'd need my silence on the matter, meaning no unemployment claim, no noise, no pushback of any kind. He slid a piece of paper across the desk, a resignation form, already dated. I sat in that chair for what felt like a full minute without speaking. I knew the money hadn't come from my register. I knew it, and he knew I knew it, and neither one of us said so out loud. There are moments in a person's life when the unfairness of a thing is so complete, so geometrically precise in the way it has you trapped that anger can't even find a foothold. I just felt cold. I thought about Callie. I thought about the landlord, Mr. Dees, who had already given me 1 extension and told me kindly but plainly that he couldn't give me another. I thought about Willie in the kitchen, who would hear about this and feel terrible and not be able to do a thing. I signed the paper. I walked out through the kitchen without looking at anyone, pushed through the back door, and stood in the gravel lot behind the diner. The October air smelled like wood smoke and the first edge of real cold. I found my phone, one of those early pay-as-you-go things the size of a deck of cards, and I called my sister in Nashville. I didn't yell. I didn't cry, not right then. I just told her what had happened, in the flat voice a person uses when they're reporting damage instead of feeling it. I told her about the $43 that weren't mine. I told her about the resignation I'd signed. I told her I had $61 in my checking account, a daughter who needed new shoes, and no idea what I was going to do by Friday when the rent came due. My sister, God bless her, listened to every word, and then told me she'd wire me $200 in the morning, and I should start looking for work first thing tomorrow. I thanked her. I hung up. I stood there a little while longer, watching the tree line go orange and red in the afternoon light. What I did not know was that the back door I had pushed through was propped open about 4 inches by a milk crate. Willie used to keep it from latching when he stepped out for air. And what I did not know was that there was a man sitting on a low concrete step just around the corner of the building, not 6 feet from where I was standing, who had slipped out the side door of the diner to finish a cup of coffee in the quiet. He was a big man. I registered that before anything else when I finally noticed him and startled. Wide through the shoulders, a dark beard going gray at the edges, a leather vest over a flannel shirt, the kind of patches and insignia on the vest that told you immediately what kind of organization he belonged to. The Iron Compass MC. I had seen their bikes parked out front on the way out, 3 of them, the chrome catching the afternoon sun. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at his coffee cup. But when I startled, he looked up, and what I saw in his face was not what I expected. I expected the blank appraising look men sometimes give a woman who has walked in on their privacy. What I saw instead was something quieter, something that looked, if I had to name it, like a man who had heard everything and was deciding what to do about it. "Sorry," I said, because I didn't know what else to say. "Don't be," he said. He asked me my name. I told him. He asked me one more question, and it was this. He'd do this to anybody else here, or just you. I thought about the girl before me, a 20-year-old named Dara, who had left in the spring without collecting her last week's pay, because she'd been too scared to ask for it. I thought about a girl named Patrice the year before that, who had lasted 6 weeks and then disappeared one morning, never came back for her apron. I told him I believed it had happened before, more than once. He nodded. He turned the coffee cup slowly in his big hands, looking at the bottom of it like a man reading. In something the rest of us couldn't see, the afternoon light came around the corner of the building and caught the patches on his vest. The iron compass name arcing over a compass rose, stitched in red and black thread, worn soft at the edges the way things get when they have been earned and kept a long time. He looked back up at me. "You've got a little girl," he said. It wasn't a question. He must have heard me say it on the phone. 7 years old, I said. He nodded again. "Good age," he said, as if that settled something. He didn't say he was sorry, and he didn't say it would be all right, and I was grateful for both of those silences. He just stood up, set the empty cup on the step, and walked back around the corner of the building to where the bikes were parked out front. I heard one engine turn over, then a second, then a third, and then the sound of them pulling out onto the road and fading south toward the highway. After a moment, I went to my car and drove home to Cali. I did not think about it much in the days that followed. I was too busy. I applied at the motor lodge out on the highway, and at the grocery in Ridgemont, and at 2 other diners in the county. My sister's wire came through. I bought Callie the shoes. I called Mr. Dees and asked for 2 weeks, and he was kind about it, though I could hear the reluctance in his voice. On Thursday morning, 3 days after I'd been fired, I was sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a yellow legal pad where I was trying to work out a budget that simply did not add up when I heard engines. Anyone who has heard a large number of motorcycles coming down a quiet street knows the sound is not subtle. It begins as a low vibration you feel before you hear it, like a change in air pressure, and then it builds and separates into individual voices, each engine slightly different, slightly its own, and then it is simply everything. A deep, rolling thunder that fills the street and the walls and your chest cavity and rattles the coffee in your cup. I went to the window. They were coming from the direction of the highway, 2 abreast. A long column of them moving at an unhurried pace. Leather and chrome catching the thin October light, the dark red iron compass insignia on every back. Their faces were calm, not angry, not theatrical. Just the settled, purposeful expression of men who have somewhere to be and have decided to go there. I counted a dozen before I lost track, then another dozen. The column kept coming, turning the corner at the end of my block, and I understood after a moment where they were heading. Harlan's diner was 3 blocks east. I stood at that window until the sound faded, and then stood there a while longer in the silence they left behind. What I learned afterward I pieced together from Willie, from the woman who ran the hardware store 2 doors down from the diner, and from a deputy sheriff I knew slightly who told me about it later with a particular expression on his face. Something between disbelief and satisfaction. 63 riders. They filled the parking lot of the diner and lined both sides of the street in front of it, engines off, standing by their bikes, not one of them moving or speaking. The road captain walked inside alone. He asked for Harlan Pruitt by name. He and Harlan spoke privately in that same back office for approximately 11 minutes. He was calm throughout. He was not threatening in any way anyone could put a name to. He simply laid out what he knew, who had seen it, and what they were prepared to say, and what he expected to happen before end of business that day. By 2 o'clock that Thursday afternoon, Harlan Pruitt had called the county sheriff's non-emergency line to report that the discrepancy in his register had been traced to a bookkeeping error on his part, and that no employee had been involved. By 3 o'clock, he had called me directly and told me, in a voice stripped of everything but the bare minimum required for speech, that he had been mistaken, that my position was available if I wanted it, and that there would be 2 weeks back pay reflecting the error I took it. Not because I forgave him, I did not, and I never worked there past that January. but because I needed the money, and because saying yes cost him something, and I wanted him to feel that. There was one more thing. Mr. Dees, my landlord, called me the following morning. He told me, sounding somewhat shaken, that he had received a visit from several gentlemen the previous afternoon, who had mentioned, in a friendly way, that they understood I was a good tenant who had hit a rough patch, and that they hoped he would see his way to clearing the balance of what I owed. He said one of the gentlemen had left an envelope on his kitchen table. He said the envelope contained exactly what I owed in back rent, down to the dollar. He did not know how they had known the amount, neither did I. I never went back to thank the road captain in person. I didn't know how to find him, and if I'm honest, I was also a little afraid of disrupting something I didn't fully understand, a code or a balance, or whatever it was that had moved 63 men to ride to a small town on a Thursday morning for a woman they had never met. Some things feel fragile if you examine them too closely, but I think about it. I think about it when my daughter, who is 40 now, calls me on Sunday evenings from the hospital where she works as a charge nurse, tired in the good way. That means she has done something that mattered. I think about the yellow legal pad on my kitchen table that Thursday morning, the numbers that wouldn't add up, and the sound that started at the edge of town and rolled down the street like something that had been a long time coming. I think about a big man with a gray-edged beard sitting on a concrete step, looking at his coffee cup, deciding. 63 riders for a woman they did not know, over a wrong that was never going to make the news. That is what they were. Men who looked like danger and were something else entirely. Men who heard the word of a stranger in a gravel parking lot and decided that was enough. I have never been able to properly explain that to anyone who didn't already understand it. Maybe you don't explain things like that. Maybe you just carry them. My daughter is a nurse because those men came on a Thursday morning. That is a fact as plain and as solid as anything I know. I carry it like a quiet thing in my chest, and I expect I always will.